Morning, everybody. Happy May. I should double check my notes. It's finally starting to brighten up here a little bit. It's supposed to be like 80s today or something. Okay, this morning we are going to go over something that many people probably never notice and don't know is there, because it's a really teeny tiny writing at the very bottom of your window that you have open. It's this little preferences button over here. I have to adjust my window because I keep hitting the Zoom bar when I do that. So it's this little preferences button all the way down at the bottom. Also, along with the log out button, the system sometimes will log you out if you've not done anything on it for a while. If you just close it or whatever, probably should always log out, but I never do. But when you do want to log out, just click that and it'll go. So let me click on the preferences. Probably mostly going to be able to work in the sandbox today because this isn't really something that I need to go back to like look at actual records for. So there's this little preferences button right here. When you click that, it gets you to this whole window here. This is 100% dependent on your login or goes off of your login. So anything you do here when you're logged in as you will only be applicable to you. So if there's anything here that you see you want to do for any of your users, you should go in and do it when you create their login and go edit their login. Because anything I do here is not going to do anything for anybody else's system. There's a bunch of options over here. Some of these, as we go down, I'll just kind of go through them, talk about them a little bit. Some of them we can't do anything about. They're just kind of set things. And some of them, they will show like a drop down, like you have an option, you don't have any option because we only have one option right now. And that's all that we really need. So I'll talk about those when we get to them. So as we go down, these general editing, batch editing, quick add, all kinds of interesting things. The general preferences, and basically let me just start off too, is that these are all little things that to make your lives easier when using the system, especially for like searching and stuff like that. It'll help you get to searches easier, duplicate stuff faster. So it's not like an earth-shattering thing, although I found it really useful for a couple things when I was working with this initially. So the general preferences, user interface locale, yes, you're always going to be English. If you choose any one of these, it'll change the locale to like something completely different. The interface theme, we only have the CollectiveAccess default theme. There's nothing else fancy with that. You can also, this one I really liked, is show the current location as a breadcrumb trail. So let me wonder if I can do this. See if I can duplicate the sandbox tab so I can hop back and forth to records. Okay, so it'll give you kind of a breadcrumb trail for where you are in the system, not like the physical location of where the thing is, but where you are in things. And let me see if I can go to like relationships and does this or not. Not really that. I honestly, I've had this on for so long, I don't remember what it looks like when it's off. Let me turn it off and see if it can show up. I don't think I need to log out with this and log back in, but I might have to. Okay. So I think it's just the tabs that kind of show up at the top. Yes. Okay. It does show more information up here about what something is, if it's editing, found, and collection, basic info, kind of stuff like that, giving you a, so I'm in editing for this found in location basic info tab. So it kind of changes as you go through. Now you're in contents. It's one of those, like, I've been in this for so long, I know where I am and I know where to look. But especially if you're new to the system, it might be useful. I just have it on by default all the time. Okay, this is actually a really big one. Auto clear previous quick search. So you have options for clear search terms for a new search, or search terms remain editable for the next search. So this is if you go up here, you can click on stuff that you've already put in before. Or when you're going up to edit, you can say, I mean, you can choose it, but if you click on it, it might change. Oh, I meant to do that over here, not over here. Sorry. Let me see if I can go back. Yeah. Take my own advice. Don't go into, don't hit the back button in the browser because it won't go anywhere. Clear search terms. Search terms remain editable for the next search. Let me save that back into my real life test system. And refresh that. No results. So when you go up and click on this, we're saying search terms remain. So when you're clicking into the field, it's not going away. Doing it the other way, you'll still get the drop down. So it'll randomly remember searches that you did that you can kind of go back to it, but this leaves those searches up in the box. So especially if you've got something that you know is a big bunch of numbers, you're in this number all the time, it'll go back up there and be like, oh, now I want to search for this, and it'll leave it so you don't have to type in 1986.12 every time. Maybe I do need to go into Fairfield so I have batches of numbers that I remember for a good example. 1978 might work for this. Okay, so there's all of my 1978.166. So if I wanted to go back in, and if it had a subpoint or something like that, this means I just don't have to type everything again. I can just back up the one and say 3, something like that. Again, kind of really good for large batches of objects that you're trying to jump around a lot. If you're going back and forth and you've already got it in your history, that's great. You can just go there. But if you're just kind of searching over and over for the same thing, it's kind of like a little save quick search for this. I'm going to leave on for this now. But that was like a game changer for me when I first did that, especially if I was doing something really long for some reason. There are other ways to save specific searches, but it wasn't anything that I really needed to do that for some reason. It just made it a lot more useful doing it this way. Remember last search or browse, retain previous search terms and results when performing a search or browse. You also have, again, a clear previous search terms when performing a new search or browse. Michelle, a lot of this actually might help you with your wanting to narrow down some searches and not get as many results. And there's another tab later on that may help with that too, depending on where you are and how you're searching. I've been retaining the previous search term when performing a new search or browse, just because I always go for really broad things where I was in my workflow when I set this up for myself. But clearing the search terms and all that when performing a new one might be the way to go if you're really narrowing stuff down. We'll save that just for kicks. And it does appear as I'm doing this too that you do not need to log out and log back in. It should take effect for yourself instantly, because I'm basically in both places as myself. Okay, include public sets from other users as a search option. This is, not many of us have used public sets yet, and we're still tweaking that in the sync to make sure those set up, because I know a couple places have tried to and put them in for the portal and they haven't been syncing yet. But I don't know why if you're putting it in as a public set, I don't know why you would want to hide it unless you just have a bunch of them and there's no need for them to show up to people when they're searching. This is just within your own system at this point. This isn't anything else beyond that. And actually, I would want to see stuff from other users just because I like to see what everybody else is doing. But if it interferes with your workflow and you've got education set up to make a bunch of stuff, maybe it's useful to do that. This is a lot of like, with some of the deeper settings, it's a lot of trial and error to see what you like and what you want to do. Download, export data in editor immediately. You can do immediate download or show options. And I think I just have download immediately, so it pops up. I don't know how many of the options there are. So we'll just do a test on this and see what we have. So download, export tools, download using, we'll do Word. Yeah, see these are, oh wait, was that a PDF one then? Hold on. Because there was one that was like a PDF option. Or show options, right? This also may be, go away. Okay, this is also in, this is actually more for doing it in summary. So rather than doing the export off the other one. So I've got it set to just download immediately because usually if I want to download from here, I want it as a PDF because I'll manipulate things other ways somewhere else. But if you download this one, it'll give you options of which display you want. And if you want it in Word, object summary, or PDF. So this does give you an option if you want it for a specific object. I have done this before. I'm kind of glad I'm reminding myself of how I did it for doing object labels or giving my curator a report to edit the object labels. I am going to flip over to Fairfield because I know I have a couple things views set up for that. So I'm going to look at my summary here. If I click on the PDF, I've got it set up for Word, but the general object reports say I want the exhibition label. So it's only got a few specific fields and put it in Word. I can download it so she can go in and edit like the Word document without having to run a couple different reports for it. So she wanted to get rid of the object titles or something. Oh, enable editing, that helps. So she could actually do a label, or if you're just putting out a sheet for a tour or something, you can kind of do that and give yourself all the information and not make it look kind of busy with all the terminology. Oops. Undo this. It's too early for Word today, I think. There we go. It's kind of like a quick and dirty way of making something work for like a quick label or something. And then do whatever else you want with it. Don't save. Did you see any of that? Actually, I totally forgot because my, yeah.
Nope.
Why do you guys see something? Let me close this weirdo one that I have open randomly. Just doing the whole thing for now. So let me redo that. Let me see if I can edit that out for the actual recording. So when you go into your record, you click on your summary, you can open it in Microsoft Word, choose from your download views. So I've got exhibition label here, and I'm going to repeat myself so in case I do cut this out. So we can go into Word, and you should see the Word document now, right? Okay, thank you. Enable your editing so you can go in and get rid of stuff like, obviously, that's the title, that's the creator, that's the donor line. So you can kind of make it a quickie label if you wanted to put something out that's on show for like the board or something. Works really well. And you can just edit it however you want. Obviously, if you're doing this for an actual exhibit, you might get to hand this off to your designer or like fancy it up a little bit, but it gives it a lot of the basic information to cut and paste that you can edit and go from there. And if you want the image or not, or anything like that. So I found this really useful to just send a bunch of these off to my curator when she was doing some labels for something, and she could just copy and paste and click it in. You can copy and paste in the regular thing, but it just puts it all in one place really easily. Going back to the sandbox to try the preferences still. So that's where your show options and all that stuff in. That one didn't have the other one because that was back in Fairfield. We're going to leave this with show options for now for the sandbox, and anybody wants to go in and play with it, obviously feel free. That's what it's here for. And then use displays for PDF summary output, yes or no. Again, that's the option if you're going into the summary of the object. Show your options so that you'll get more options here. If you want to include logo, page numbers, identification, footer, these I check off or not, depending if I'm just printing something out for somebody. I don't really pay attention if I'm just doing it to send off to somebody really quick. Just options if you want to know when. If you're printing out sheets to put in the object files as part of the record, you might want to put date and time in the footer, in the identification, so you just have the more information, the better. So that's the general one. Like I said, the searching one was my favorite thing to find, so I didn't have to go in and retype the whole number every single time. Okay, editing is not really many choices in this. It looks like there's a lot of choices, but we have the interfaces, we just have the one interface for everything. And there's a couple things that we do have. I have done other sort of interfaces for, but it's more of just like the page setup versus a whole editor. So even those aren't really, don't show up in this. Like collection, they all come up in the collection editor docs part. So this isn't really a thing. The only thing is cataloging locale, which is language again. And this one is interesting, and it's funny that it just kind of buried here, but it is under editing. The default action for handling references for an object to be deleted. Any of you who have been doing cleanup are very familiar with that. When you delete and it's like, what do you want to do with this thing? You can go either system default, automatically go to remove references, or automatically go to transfer references to another item. For something like this, even though I pretty much 99.9% of the time use transfer references to another item, I think I would keep that as making the decision every time, because it could be different for every time you're editing records like that. I wouldn't want to have it automatically set to remove references and then realize too late that I wanted to change something. I think it'll still show you the option. Actually, let's save it and see. Leave references. Brush for kicks. Let's see if I can get like a lot and find something to delete. Let's see what it does. I don't know why I'm being careful with this. It doesn't really matter if there's nothing in the lot. It's all fake anyway. So the test lot, if we're here and we try to delete it, this one just seems like it keeps it. I mean, it's default clicked onto remove all associated metadata, so maybe it's more talking about that. So it saves you a click. I don't know how much that of a time saver that is. You could always do it to the transfer metadata. See if it does do that. And just automatically do it too. I'm kind of trying to give the system like a beat to make sure that it's set. If we go back to this one and click delete. Yeah, okay. It is that. It's just like picking your option. So especially if you've got anybody else doing work, you want to make sure that you're giving them like this option first. So it doesn't make it always set to that. It just gives you what the preference is to present you with this and be like, oh yeah, I wanted to transfer it. That's fine. I'm going to go to system default for this and keep it as that for demonstration purposes for the sandbox. User interfaces for all of these things, again, we only have the one. So there's no real choice with any of these. You are going to use that. Batch editing is basically the same thing. Looks like there's a pull down, you only have that one choice. So it's always going to give you that option. Within those options for batch editing, what fields show up sometimes. Oh, actually, no, it'll give you the whole editor. It's not going to do it by whatever your custom display is. It will show up custom displays for things like the spreadsheet editing. Depending on what fields you want to do, it'll just show you what you've got in your spreadsheet view, which I think we touched on in the waffle editing ages ago, but I'm not sure. Quick add. More that are just giving you the option. This was one that we had one of the state library folks was playing with this a little bit. So she added a different editor, but for our purposes, we only have the one selection for all of these. So this is the way it's set. So we're usually pretty good with this. And honestly, I haven't found an need to be able to tweak any of this stuff for like a quick add. Units and measurements, pretty straightforward. Do you want it to be as entered, metric, imperial? As entered, I find the easiest just because I've got leaving it as entered. I've got so many different things in the system that are entered as both inches or centimeters that I want to be able to enter it as I have it, because I don't know what they were doing at the time as far as jumping back and forth. And then currency display, and that's your preferred. That doesn't mean you can't change it to pounds. You totally can, or whatever else, but it'll automatically assume that for display on some things. Okay, duplication. This is going down by each page or each module. So you've got objects and entities, occurrences / exhibitions. All of these things, displays all the way down. I will spoiler the displays thing. You can't copy these and make new ones, which is kind of annoying because sometimes it's nice to be able to say like, I want this one, but just with this one field. I don't know why these are grayed out. So that's a spoiler that doesn't really give you any options, sadly. So, but duplication of objects, if you have need to, or part of your workflow is doing a lot of record duplicating to avoid having to start from scratch on every record, this is a good place to tweak things and figure out what parts of the items you want to keep when you're doing a duplicate record. So this is another one of these gets really granular. Depends what your workflow is, what you're duplicating, what you're not. Duplicate non-preferred labels. Yes, so that's like a subtitle, I believe. Relationship with metadata, I just leave all of these usually and figure out I'm going to delete anything I don't want when I go and clean up the record. Only duplicate current relationships. Yes, I've left that on because I don't want any old relationships or non-current ones in there. So I only want the current relationships. Duplicate media, no, I do have that turned off. Otherwise, in theory, it will duplicate whatever media records you have attached to that record. And you usually do not want that unless you're doing like a T set and you have everything cataloged individually, but the only image you have is of that one T set. So you want to add that same image to everything. I don't know if changing this setting is worth being able to do the quickie duplication on that, because there's other ways of attaching multiple records to one image. I don't know if we've looked at that before, but if you go into the media record, you can attach other object records to one media file. And that might be easier than having to go in here, change this, maybe change it back, or delete a bunch of related media if you don't need it. Duplicate object metadata. Actually, let me do this over here on the right really quick. Duplicate relationships. Do you always want to duplicate storage locations? I in general have this on Fairfield because if I'm duplicating something very often, it's a very similar record. If it's similar enough that I won't have to do much editing, that means it'll probably be stored in the same place. So I'll leave it there. I can very much see where you would not want to do this. And actually, I had somebody ask me about this a really long time ago, and I need to go in his system and double check and see if he's got this checked off, because he did want storage locations copied with everything. But do you want relationships between other objects, exhibits, loans, vocabulary, entities, all of this stuff checked off? This is kind of the way I have it for Fairfield, I believe. Yeah, this is all the things that I would want if I was duplicating record. If I had a lot of like 10 objects, and I've done this before of new things, I'm like, all right, let me get the basic stuff in there. Let me get the entities in there, and we'll go from there. Duplicate object child records. Very often don't have these, so it doesn't really make a difference, but I've got it clicked off as yes. I know I have this clicked off as yes in Fairfield as well. So back to the duplicate object metadata. This field is talking about all of this stuff. Do you want to duplicate all of these things or not duplicate? Do you want the object count the same or not? You can just go back and forth with these. You can do the group check, uncheck at the top and just say, do not duplicate, and then go through and check off the things you want. Object lots list, no, I don't want media. Thesaurus, maybe. Cataloged by, maybe. If it's all the same lot, it may be a bunch of old stuff. Credit line, definitely yes. Dates, who knows. Curatorial, probably not. This is very much like a 1-by-1 and depends on what you're doing. So this is something that can really, and again, this only relates to you. So if you've got a team of volunteers, most of the time I don't let them copy records anyway, but if you have somebody else doing stuff, it really depends on what the workflow of what you're doing right that moment is. So there's a lot of stuff you can have a lot of stuff checked off to copy, or you can really narrow it down to only a few things. I'm going to not save this, so I want to keep this where it was. And it's kind of the same thing as you go through for entities in the other pages. And it tweaks a little bit. I mean, obviously tweaks the metadata element depending what section you're in, and changes some of the stuff up there depending what you're in. So duplicate relationships. I very rarely duplicate entities. I usually start from scratch with all of those, so it's not usually a thing. Exhibitions, same. You just have to see what's here. I very rarely duplicate exhibitions. Lots I have usually no need. It's much more the objects, because you're usually going to have one object lot to relate to all of the rest of the stuff. So usually not a need to duplicate a lot unless you've got one donor that gives you stuff over and over and over again, and you know, I can see a need for it. I usually haven't had to do that. Collections, I really haven't had a need. That could be useful if you're trying to bulk enter stuff and entering series and boxes and things like that. You might be able to do that. That might be something to play with if you have your overall description and then want to do like child location record or child records. That's kind of something you might want to explore. Depends on how much work you're doing in your archives. And storage locations, you want to relate all of this stuff. Child records would definitely be a big one for that, whether you're adding things in like objects and the relationships there. Loans I can see duplicating, and frankly, I should probably use this more when I've got a couple groups that we've gotten loans from in several different times. It might save me some work. lists, I don't really get into this too much because this is getting into the lists and vocabularies, and I try not to mess with that stuff too much. Partially because I don't want to break the system, because adding these things in the wrong place may mess something up. Stuff that's just in your system, it's fine. Just if you're creating new lists like that, just don't expect them to show up on the portal. This would be good for your own information. And same kind of with list items. Okay, sets is the one that was really interesting, that I was saying, I think I found the answer to one of our questions at one point when I was demoing sets. And there were options to copy a set. When I went in and did it, I actually, along with copying the set, I created a whole new other set of the attached objects. And it was one of those times of realizing it partway through the demo. I'm like, I don't know how I just did that. Like, what just happened? Mike was probably there for it because I did it like a while ago. There is an option here if you're duplicating sets. Duplicate non-preferred labels, relationships, media, duplicate items. You can choose yes or no. You do not want to duplicate the items. You just want to create something with the same set. Duplicate set metadata, yes. I want to keep that, but I don't want to create a whole nother set of items. I had to go in and batch delete like a whole bunch of the stuff that I had created accidentally. Because there's a couple different ways of going about it. And we'll probably do something on, oh, I think I have it on the list to do something about sets relatively soon, before the end of the year anyway. So we'll probably talk about that and kind of look into this a little bit. So actually, I'm curious what I have it set as in here for myself. Because at some point I did it again and it didn't do it. I'm like, what did I do? Yeah, duplicate items I turned off. So now it doesn't do it, which is great. All right, back to the sandbox. And you've got the duplicate or do not duplicate. So it depends what you want. With any of these, I would rather click off all the do not duplicates and then go over them one by one to see what I want to keep. And again, the displays, sadly, you cannot duplicate the displays, which is weird. And I don't know why. But since I know this is an option there, somehow I may look when we get into like system tweaks down the road, maybe like next year, about stuff, suggested improvements and things like that. Okay, quick search. So this is where I'm saying you might be able to narrow things down a little bit. So this is related to your quick search box up here and what items it searches. So right now you've got two columns. It's a drag and drop, like some of the other things, available searches and searches to display. So for this, everything's just automatically over there. But if you only wanted to search objects all the time, only and forever, you could take things out like the exhibits, object lots, loans, tourist stops we don't need, so we don't need that anyway. Maybe collections. Maybe you just want to search objects and entities. So if you do that, you're only going to be searching those two modules when you do the quick search at the top. This would also, so be careful what's in there, because if you think you're searching everything in the whole entire system and you changed this, you're not, you're just searching objects and entities, but you can put it back. Again, this is only your login. This isn't anybody else's login. It's like, Michelle, if you only want collections and you don't want anything with objects, you can just get rid of all that object stuff and see if you don't want it. You just want entities. When you pull up the results, it'll still show you, related objects and all that stuff. It doesn't get rid of that. This is only in relation to this quick search box at the top. Gonna put everything back just because it'll mess everybody up. Actually, did I even save that? Oh, I did. Okay, let me put everything back. Because if I say it pulls up everything and then it doesn't, it's gonna be really weird. I'm not going to bother with tourist stops again, though, because we don't use it. So in theory, with this user profile one, you should be able to put in your organization. So, when you have that user profile and you create a new one and this part comes up, and I usually tell people, I'm like, you don't really need to put all this information if you don't want to. just kind of extra. I do change everybody to Connecticut, but that's about it. I tried this earlier because I'm like, well, at least I can make it everybody stays Connecticut, and it didn't seem to work. So play with it if you want. If you want to just always put your institution in there so it comes up. Just changing it to Connecticut didn't seem to work for the new user thing. I'm going to try it again just for kicks there. Manage access control. New user. Yeah, see, it still automatically comes up to that. So I don't know how much that works. I wish it did. It'd be a lot easier. Okay, the other thing that's not super obviously useful, but can come in handy is this little developer preferences. And what this is shows query details in search builder interface, show or hide, show template debugger, show or hide. I don't remember what that was for. I used to know. And show bundle codes. The show bundle codes can be really useful because it'll show you what the system's name for the fields that you're using is when you're in it. And that'll help you if you're trying to create displays or custom searches to know which fields to drag over. Because you know, if you're creating a display and you're like, I can't find the stupid field, I don't know what it's called in this whole long list of fields. If you show that in your system, it'll help you a little bit. So I'm going to say show. So right now, if you go into a record, you've just got your titles, object identifier, title, alternate title, other identifiers. It's, you know what those are, obviously. So if you're in the sandbox and you go show bundle codes and save that. So now in the little parentheses, you get what the system calls those little fields. You're like, I can't find title. There's nothing under T. Where's the stupid title to add this to my thing? Oh, no, it's objects.preferred_labels. And that's more where you'll be likely to find it in some places. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a help for figuring out what the field is actually called in some cases. Other identifiers is object, other identifiers, things you don't necessarily think of like, oh, it's objects. Okay. I think so, especially with, yeah, entities, it's straight into collective access entities. Credit line is objects, credit line, stuff like that. So it can be useful to try to be able to figure out what those fields are called if you're doing a set or if you're doing a search. So, whoops, no displays. So if you're going in biography with life dates and you're on your display list, you're like, what are these called? It's not going to give you the dot and the underscore, but it'll give you a better idea of like, oh, it's entity names, silly things like that. I should have looked at an object one. Yeah, so object titles, object identifier, things like that. So it gives you a little bit of a hint if you're going insane and can't find that field that you want. It does, I think it does kind of, depends on your preference. Sometimes after a while, you just don't even see it anymore. I don't know if it makes it too noisy and too much of a pain, or if it is a better explanation of what actually goes in that field. So that's another, totally up to you when you use it. Since it's your own preference for your own login, yeah, it's whatever's going to work best for you. May be helpful if you're first using the system. Hard to say. Preferences. I'm gonna hide those again for now, just because for purposes of the sandbox, I don't want to confuse people. And I think, oh, going back to the query details and search builder, find objects. I've got show on, so I don't know how much that changes that. It might be part of this. That's part of that breadcrumb thing. and turn that off just for kicks and see what happens. I think there might be something else that pops up there when you do that, and I don't remember what it is. It's another trial and error and see if there's anything that's useful. Oh, because I didn't search anything, did I? There might be another like breadcrumb thing that finds it there, or it could be this part. Also, a little side note, when you do these search builder things, if you have especially like a multiple layered one that's kind of a pain to do and you had to really tweak it, once you've got it, finding the stuff you want, if you click that save, it'll save that search for you. So you'll be able to go in to find something and save searches and find it. Oh, I think it's over here, save searches, so you'll be able to find it from over there. Show, because since it was on show, I'm gonna leave that there. I don't know if it changes anything drastically. Oh, it just shows the, oh, actually, that is kind of useful. It shows the path up there of how that search is done. So this is something that if you were trying to find something else and needed to, it wasn't quite right. If you copied this and put it in the search and the find, it actually would do the same thing as the search builder. So it's getting kind of a little bit deeper, a little bit into the weeds of the language of the search in the system. So this actually is really useful. I'm going to leave that on for this one and make sure that I have it on for Fairfields, because there were a couple things that I was looking for that I had to get information from Seth on how to do that search. He's like, oh, you just do this. I was like, oh, okay, that's easy. Yeah, so objects type ID physical object, that's just the computer version of this. I would never think to type that. So, okay, that's kind of all the, not even brief, it actually took a little bit to go over all of that. So it's, I find it really useful. So hopefully you can tweak and do stuff like that. Search box and things can help you out a little bit.